Welcome to this broadcast of the virtual SpaceTV, brought to you by Hobby Space and Binary Space. I am Amanda Bush, your host. Please note that this show is experimental and was generated automatically by software without human interaction. On Saturday, September 10th, NASA launched two spacecraft to the Moon on a single Delta II rocket. The mission is called GRAIL, which stands for Gravity, Recovery, and Interior Laboratory. The goal is to map the gravity field of the Moon. To save fuel, the two spacecraft will take a leisurely low-energy route to the Moon and reach it around New Year's Day. They will go into a low-altitude polar orbit and fly in formation about 200 kilometers from each other. Changes in relative velocity and distance between the two spacecraft will be measured very precisely using microwave transceivers on the craft. As the leading spacecraft flies over the lunar surface, the density of the Moon below it will change and in turn influence the gravitational force on the spacecraft. This will result in a change in the distance to the other probe. The varying distances between the spacecrafts provide measurements of the density of the Moon. This mapping of the lunar density will be 100 to 1,000 times better than the current measurements, and, like an MRI exam, will illuminate the structure of the Moon. Understanding more about the Moon's core and crust will provide details on the initial formation of the Moon and on how its structure has evolved over time, such as from the impacts of large asteroids. Also, on board the spacecraft are cameras that will image the surface of the Moon. An educational program called MoonCom, organized with former astronaut Sally Ride, will allow students in middle schools in the US to direct the cameras to take pictures of particular spots of interest on the Moon. The students will use the images to study the surfaces of those areas. The two spacecraft currently have the rather boring names GRAIL A and GRAIL B. A contest will be held in which students will suggest new names for the two lunar orbiters. Sally Ride and GRAIL mission leader Maria Zuba will select the winning names. Details about the contest should be released soon. Blue Origin is a U.S. company developing reusable rocket vehicles. The firm is owned by Jeff Bezos, the founder and chief of Amazon.com. His Blue Origin company is very secretive, and until recently, they had released very little information on their vehicle development and had not publicized a flight test since 2006. It is known that the initial goal of Blue Origin is to develop a fully reusable, vertical takeoff and landing suborbital vehicle that can fly a crew of 3 people to 100 kilometers. It will be used for space tourism and for science missions. Earlier this month, a Wall Street Journal article reported on rumors of a Blue Origin test failure. Bezos soon released a statement in which he said that an unmanned prototype vehicle had crashed at the remote West Texas flight facility on August 23. The vehicle had flown successfully to a low altitude in May. The August flight was aiming for a much higher altitude. Unfortunately, when it reached about 14 kilometers and a speed of Mach 1.2, it became unstable and the engine propulsion was terminated. The vehicle was apparently destroyed on impact with the ground. Bezos says that this was just a test, and they are already building a new vehicle that will incorporate what they have learned from this failure. Blue Origin is also working on an orbital crew capsule that will launch initially on an expandable rocket. A contract with NASA is partially supporting this project, which is not directly related to the suborbital test. Space travelers often talk about how beautiful the Earth is from orbit and how there are no borders marking who lives where. NASA astronaut Gagarin, who is currently living on the International Space Station, recently spotted an exception, however. The border between Pakistan and India is now clearly visible at night due to the decision by India to light up the boundary. Perhaps someday this border will once again vanish when there are better relations between the two nations. The next show is planned for beginning of October. I would be pleased if you joined again. Bye.